Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode numero uno of Roll20 Presents Mage the Ascension, where we were going to be playing 20th anniversary version of Mage the Ascension. We in the last episode 0, because apparently this is a comic book from the 90s,
I think it is a comic book from the 90s.
I think it might be, yeah, that was the special holofoil edition. You could only get at Pizza Hut. Anyway, we made the characters in that little bit, and today I just want to take some time to reintroduce the characters. We've had a week to sit with our concepts and our shuffle some dots around if need be. I want to talk about paradigm because that was our homework, was to understand paradigm. Though God knows, God and White Wolf knows, it's going to take more than a week to understand what paradigm is about.
I thought our homework was to pick some stuff. I didn't know our homework was to understand a thing. That's
Uh-oh.
from what you told me.
Yeah, and then I also want to talk about the setting because we haven't talked about the setting yet. And then we can jump into the philosophical magical action. So, let's go through and we'll talk about paradigm and stuff. Do you want to, Andrew? Do you want to start us off talking about your character and kind of giving us the rundown
of everything, or just paradigm?
Let's talk about your concept, and I mean, I don't need to know every place you put a dot, but I want to see where your meditations on your character have taken you in the past week.
Okay. Well, my character is a displaced / orphaned person. That was my concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is that they are this. They were made as like this part of this series of servants. But mine just happened to like manifest not only a soul, which wasn't supposed to happen, but then like an awakened soul.
Right.
So it got way out of hand.
It's a feature, not a bug. It's fine.
Well, it's totes a bug. And so a lot of my abilities and stuff reflect that. My character like can't fight or like do a lot of that kind of stuff. They've been like brought up to be a servant, and so they have all of these skills that are like geared towards doing things and pleasing this one particular mage who is now fucked off. So I have a lot of etiquette and empathy and art skills. And then in terms of like my magical stuff, I took correspondence, matter, crime, and time.
Nice.
And so the character is going to be all about like making little things and more about the like social magic and stuff like that.
So you're Pinocchio now, but you're going to be Dr. Manhattan later.
I guess so. I don't know.
Okay, cool. I like it.
And then I spent a bunch of my freebie points and backgrounds as well because a bunch of them really appealed to me. So like I have resources 3, so I have like my own property. I'm fairly well off. I can like maintain a humble standard of living kind of indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
Avatar 3, so my like awakened self is actually very, very like it's a big deal. It's very like important within my own kind of worldview and stuff like that. And I have a retainer and a familiar.
Nice.
Like
you got magic friends.
But both
Like
of
a
those
partner
magic
with
friends
you.
are other individuals in the series of servants. So it's like my character lives with 2 exact replicas of themselves.
Right.
Which are,
Exact to specifications that only you can detect, or like because you're not. I assume your version, X point Y, and then their versions on either side or in different.
But they
sides
look the same. Like we're all twins essentially.
Right. Okay.
So we all look identical.
Triplets even.
Yeah. So there are 3 of us. One of whom is my like butler, right? They're just my retainer, and then the one that's my familiar is in some way like tethered to a computer.
So is it in that order? Like, are you the top of the ontological tier, and then the next model down that wasn't as good is your butler, and the next model down is your retainer, or your familiar?
The familiar is in the middle, and the retainer is at the bottom.
Okay.
So the familiar like kind of maybe has a soul or something, like they were another defective model, and then the retainer is just like the baseline model.
I love the idea of a soul as a non-binary condition. Like, you kind of have one, or it's part of one. I don't. We're working on it.
Yeah, they're in this weird gray area.
Okay.
And then yeah, the one that's my retainer is just like that was the like default out of the box version.
Right. That's the over-the-counter version of you. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about your character's name. So is this a name? Is Kaguya a name that they gave themselves?
Yeah, it's like they're very explicitly referencing that thing that I'm referencing.
Sure. Okay.
This is not me, the player, trying to be clever. This is like them trying to embody this idea.
Okay. Would you like to talk a little bit about that idea so that we can all be on the same cultural page as you are?
So, yeah, Kaguya is a character from this. It's like quite possibly the oldest known like Japanese folk tale, and it's the tale of the bamboo cutter. And there's a beautiful Ghibli movie based on it, which I watched recently, which is kind of why this is at the forefront of my mind. And in it, this bamboo cutter finds this little tiny person when he's out cutting bamboo, just like inside one of the stalks of bamboo. There's this little tiny princess who then like turns into a full-size baby, and him and his wife, who like never had any kids and they're quite old, end up raising this little girl who grows like very quickly, like bamboo would is kind of the idea. And then like he keeps finding gold when he cuts bamboo after that, and there's kind of this idea that like it is being sent to make her have a really nice life, or like to pay them for taking care of her. And she's of course incredibly beautiful, and everyone, all the princes and whatnot, are her suitors, and blah blah blah. And then in the end, she gets taken back to the moon where she comes from.
Right, of course.
And so like all the moon people just like come down, and it's kind of this in the Ghibli movie, they very much give it a like Buddhist kind of presentation where like basically Buddha and all of these other people from the moon come down and are like, hey, it's time for you to forget about all earthly problems, put this cloak over her shoulders, and she just forgets everything and goes home. And is obviously like very sad and cut up about it initially. And there was some other element. Anyways, so yeah, there is definitely like a lot of Buddhist undertones to this story, but it's the idea of this character who like, what I think my character really likes about the story and why they chose that as their name is this idea of like, one, it's tied to an idea of ascension, which is important for mages. And then also that's kind of, they really identify with the like origin bit as well of just like, oh, like I kind of just like accidentally came into being, or I was found within this. So that's kind of it. Hilariously, Sailor Moon is also based in part on this story.
That's right.
Right, because she's a moon princess. Yeah.
She's a moon princess.
So it's like a really important piece of Japanese culture.
Wait a second. Okay.
Heritage.
All right.
Wait a second, what?
Nope. It's fine.
Cool.
Continue.
Okay. So the reason that I asked to like actually get a fuller understanding of that story and everything is because these kinds of things on like a metaphysical level like really matter. Like the fact that your character chose their own name and chose it for these reasons makes it impacts your character's existence and the way you process the world, because the things that we believe are what give us our magic powers.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got this great little like folk story that you gave your name to and stuff and all that. So how do you manifest your will in the world? Let's talk about your paradigm a little bit. So in this version of Mage, paradigm is it's actually broken down into some specific. I actually really like the way M20 uses paradigms, because it used to kind of just be like, I don't know, figure out your paradigm. It's your paradigm, and then make stuff up about it. but there's actually some specific like pieces. So what the mage believes is their paradigm. How does the mage turn belief into action is their practice, and what instruments would you use in this practice to find your instruments, and all that stuff together in the game terms is called your focus. So let's break your focus down.
And also one thing that's really important to mention about my character when we're talking about my paradigm, practice, etc.
Yeah.
Is that because I'm part of the orphan tradition, quote unquote tradition.
Yeah.
Mine is kind of cobbled together. Like no one actually taught me mine. I had to kind of figure it out. So
yeah. So you were built by an aetherite, but then you're like, no, I can.
But he didn't teach me shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. You don't teach the microwave how to compose orchestral pieces. It's
the
just
clock that occasionally cooks things.
It's just a goddamn microwave. All right, cool. Well, yeah, let's talk about your paradigm. So there are a selection of paradigms in the book that you can choose from, but there's also you can make them up, and they're generally kind of like summed up in a single sentence, like everything is data, or divine order and earthly chaos. They're ways of looking at different philosophies. Which one did you choose, Andrew?
I went with a world of gods and monsters.
Okay. And what drew you to that particular paradigm?
Well, because like
you're a monster.
No, I'm not a monster. What are you talking about? The reason I went with that is that my character was like created by someone on like multiple levels, right? Like one, they were like crafted as this like homunculus servant thing, but then also that like somehow they accidentally or very arbitrarily got imbued with a soul and all this other stuff. And so they have this feeling of like being the plaything of higher powers, and both ones that they are more tangible, like their like direct creator, but then also just like gods or dark, beyond space and time things, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and this paradigm I find particularly interesting because it's both this very kind of ancient feeling paradigm where it's like, this is what, pretty much most pre-modern civilizations believed. They were like, there are gods and dragons and shit, and we need to like placate them or tap into their power. But it's also, the book mentions it's a very modern paradigm because this is literally true. And you are one of those gods or monsters. And there are like werewolves and vampires and other wizards and stuff. And most people don't realize, but this is a fairly accurate paradigm for the universe that your characters live in. So yeah, that's cool. I like it. So everything is kind of inherently meaningless, but you draw power from sources of, a power within that kind of that meaninglessness. Okay, and so that's what your character believes. What are your practices? What allow you to turn those beliefs?
Yeah, so for practice, I went with craftwork, a mix of craftwork and art of desire.
Okay. Cool.
And that's kind of part of this whole idea of like my character as a, essentially, why is the word slipping my mind? Anyways, they're like a servant who is supposed to be like polite and well dressed and entertain people and make like beautiful art, and like that was their whole life. And so that's where they also found a way to like channel their power, or like
Cool.
that's how they express themselves, both in the more mundane way and then also in magic.
Yeah. And so this is about both being an object of desire and being the crafter of objects of desire, right? That kind of like balance between those two things.
Yeah, and like using what other people want as a way to get power. So it's like very much a soft power kind of practice.
I like it. Cool. Okay. And it's interesting to see those two kind of in combination because it would be easy to just go with a sort of art of desire, but also it would be easy to go with just like, I'm a robot who makes other stuff. But like the interesting kind of tension between those two is pretty cool. I'm fascinated with that. I think that's going to be really cool. Okay, cool. And then your instruments that you've chosen?
So unsurprisingly, I went with artwork. I like meditation for this character as well. Games. So I like the idea of like my character will like sit down with a Go board in front of a mirror and play against their avatar, essentially.
Right.
And that's like both meditation and like the game itself, and these are all like they learned various like games like chess, etc., because the master would want to play with them occasionally, right? As like so this is like something that they can do to entertain other people, but they've spun it to be like playing against themselves.
Games are also a really useful way to express your mind magic or time magic too. Like because the way that you perceive the world through playing the game.
Because games are about tempo and about like squaring off against someone else's wits and all that kind of stuff.
Totally.
Yeah. After games, I've got gadgets and inventions. So I definitely like the idea that like because my character like the way I'm picturing it, like they're a clockwork person, so that, like maybe their heart or something is actually this like little mechanical thing, or like various other bits of them, and so they just have this little like bit of affection for like they look at little clockwork gizmos and stuff the way that other like normal humans would look at puppies, like they think they're like cute little slightly personified things, and so they make little gizmos and whatnot, or like music boxes, that kind of thing.
Cool.
And then circles and designs, which is a more kind of understated, still about clockwork kind of thing, where they like precise patterns, and like everything about this character, I imagine, is very precise and ordered and intentional. And like part of that is the whole like etiquette element, where there's like a certain correct way to sip your tea or move or whatever else. But then also that they are in some ways mechanical as well. And then fashion, and eye contact, which are very much both part of the like art desire kind of paradigm.
Cool.
Practice.
I like it. That's awesome. It sounds like a good. There's a good variety of stuff there, and it's really interesting to think about how those practices and how your focus is going to come into play to kind of get you the magical effects that you want, right? Because that's sort of the other way is like, what would I want to do in the game? How could I get my character to do that? And then what are the practices they do? Your retainer and familiar, do they have names?
I have not named them yet.
Okay, all right, cool. We can do that later. All right, cool. All right, so Dave, let's take a look at your character.
Okay.
Your character's name is Yori, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Which kind of I hadn't realized. I thought I had made up as a name, but Adam was telling me slightly before the show that it's a traditional Japanese surname, or at least a respelling of one. So to parallel with the Moon Princess, it's something along the lines of Sun Princess.
Which is why I giggled when Andrew said the thing about Moon Princess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like this is just how it happened serendipitously. We like didn't plan this or anything.
So is this
anyway.
is this your character's is this their character's name? Like, were they born with this name, or is this like your cool hacker alias? Somewhere in between.
No, I think it's the same surname. I think they've kept their original surname, which is Rain.
Okay.
But they've kind of taken an online alias as their like given name that they will give to people. Because I mean, what's the difference really? You pick one for yourself, someone else picks one for you. This one more accurately represents them because it's about decisions they've made personally.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense for the way that I think Yuri thinks about the world. He is what were the two words I gave myself exactly? A culture hacker. So they're a virtual adept who kind of gains most of their magic, their effects and stuff through using like the ideas around certain things, whether they're symbols, whether they're like societal ideas, whether they're specific things which have mythology or properties attached to them,
or dank memes.
The dank memes.
Yeah.
What are your spheres again?
My spheres are mainly correspondence, and then I also have a single dot in entropy, matter, mind, and time.
Nice. Cool. So you're a correspondence and data guy, but there's lots of little places for improvement that you've started on. Cool. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your mentor. So, Kaguya's mentor is sort of at a remove from that character, right? Your mentor made you, and then kind of was like, okay, well, whatever, fine, you're a mage now. I'm gonna go do other things that are more interesting than babysitting you. But what about you? So remember, the concept for the game is that you are all you're kind of not the children, but the apprentices of a group of mages who are a cabal themselves. So they've all taken you on, and you all kind of know each other through that. So let's talk about your mentor a little bit. So where did you learn your magic from?
I hadn't thought about this, but I think it was one of their college professors.
Okay.
Ended up being like a mage. I have the idea that Iori's magic kind of manifested through starting to understand, or starting to believe at least, that they understand that the way reality works on a fundamental level, and hence the virtual adept and the reality hacking and stuff. So I think it was probably one of my it was probably a philosophy teacher, a philosophy lecturer or something, who introduced them to that, and they were like, yeah, you kind of get this. Stay behind after class. Actually, magic real.
Yeah, exactly.
Best kind of after class lecture.
Okay, cool.
Find out you're a wizard.
Yeah. Can you stay after class? I think you might be a wizard. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So how connected are you to the virtual adepts at large?
I don't think hugely. I think this is quite a personal thing.
Okay.
Because a lot of it is through the media that they have kind of absorbed personally. And I also understand that virtual adepts kind of come kind of close thematically with the technocracy.
Yeah.
And there's always kind of that danger there. And I feel like if I had been part of the virtual adepts little clique more, they probably would have warned me away from some of the ways that I do my magic and stuff, because it comes very, very close to changing my correspondence sphere to data,
right? And
comes very close to hypertech and stuff, which is within the realms of the black suits and mirror shades, and not something they would want to encourage.
Yeah, and that's a bit of the sort of tension for the virtual adepts to begin with, right? Is that they kind of could belong to either. Cool. Okay. So yeah, let's talk more specifically about your paradigm. So, which did you choose for your paradigm?
So I based my paradigm off of a mechanistic cosmos.
Okay. All right. So why that one? I mean, obviously, it's a pretty clear choice for a virtual adept, but let's talk about your character a little more specifically.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense, I guess, to Iori on a fundamental level that the universe is something that can be, or reality is something that can be understood. It can be traced back to its roots.
Okay.
You take causality far enough, or you abstract causality out wide enough, you can kind of get to the root of everything. Though it's had to take a slight turn from classical philosophy, because reality is a shared construct between people. It's not just made up of stuff. So I've got whereas the way the mechanistic cosmos thing is written in the book, it tends to be kind of monist philosophy stuff, everything is made up of matter. at a really deep level, or like
Mm-hmm.
quantum particles or like subatomic particles and stuff. But I think it has to be like slightly dualist in that ideas also have to be things that exist separately,
Right. So
because otherwise magic doesn't work.
right. Well, and also the interchange between like thought energy and actual energy, and like your ultimate sort of what unified field theory has to include some form of like spiritual energy in it.
Yes,
I like that. Okay. That's cool.
absolutely.
I like it. Okay, cool. And so everything is a thing that could ultimately be understood if you just look at it the right way or break it down.
Yeah.
And then your practices that you use to access those things.
Well, the like closest and like most obvious one is reality hacking.
Yeah.
Which is simply, you take things as they are understood and you manipulate them as they are understood,
Mm-hmm.
like rewriting code. But it also quite like cybernetics in like the actual definition sense of it, because like when we think of cybernetics, we think of like robotically augmented humanoids. We think of like androids.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's actually just any kind of like melding of human and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think on like in a broader sense, their practice of cybernetics is about melding people with the concept of what people are, or what ideas they have about the way things are, and like changing those a bit.
Right. So a kind of like, and this is if these kinds of conversations are confusing or upsetting to you, this is the wrong game. Please leave. Yeah.
Sorry.
Cybernetics as the synthesis of actuality and thought. I really like that idea of like, yeah, like your philosophy is a part of your cybernesis or whatever, right? It's weird as fuck. It's perfect.
Yeah, like before the show we were talking about you get a specialization when you've got more than 4 dots in an attribute, and I was like, yeah, easy. It's philosophy, intellect 5 philosophy.
Yeah.
Because it's very important to do this kind of magic. You have to at least believe you have a very deep understanding of how it works.
Right. Yeah. And I mean that's ultimately the thing about like philosophy is it's an improvable thing. So it's more about that fact that you believe it.
Yeah, and like the proof then comes from the fact that, well, I've got to know what I'm talking about to a certain extent because look, I can teleport.
Obviously, and then you explode from paradox. It depends on who you're showing this teleportation to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And then your instruments.
I went for quite a lot of instruments. So I went for like in a big broad category. There's just like media and stuff. So I've got like different manga, different books, different video games, different TV shows, movies, brands, anything kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes under like mass media or like memes. Memes in the broadest sense. I'm sure plenty of jokes waiting to happen in chat, but like in the idea of like
both in that specific sense and in the broader definition.
Yeah, like an idea perpetuated by like symbology or like repetition of stuff around it. I also went for a brain-computer interface because I think part of the reality hacking is actual reality hacking, because within the Mage setting, the digital web like exists. There's the internet, and then there's the magical version of the internet.
Yeah.
like spirit.
Well,
internet.
the digital web exists sort of in the same way that like the Shadowlands do, like where there's a mirrored version of the Earth that has different stuff about it that's like closer to Earth in terms of the grand, you know, space of the universe. But there's also the same for the internet. So the internet has its own kind of spiritual, magical like reflection, and that's the digital web.
And I have just come up with my avatar now, just like based on that.
Awesome.
And then like further with that, I put like symbols and brackets next to memes because they obviously mean things. That's like how memes are generally displayed in media. I also went for true names in the sense that the same way like a meme can be about stuff, the true name of like a character or a person and like referencing that to somebody can make them more like them.
Yeah, well, it's like how you get more like nerd cred for knowing the Japanese name of a character from a popular cartoon that was translated into English.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess you like understand it like a bit more.
Yeah, you understand its purpose. Well, and then there's the whole like thing about hacker aliases and mage names and the idea of a chosen name versus a given name and which has more power in which circumstance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my final one, I did basically get every instrument. Sorry. Is I went for weapons.
Okay.
Like a lot of their interaction with the world is through like replica or prop weapons that have like a mythology around them. Like they'll probably have a buster sword, which is when they want to be like really strong physically and stuff, or they'll have like a prop of a legendary katana when they need to do stupid stuff like
there's also the idea of like objects, especially weapons, like Excalibur, fucking lightsabers, the Spear of Longinus. Like weapons carry like this is the bullet that killed JFK, right? Like the weapons carry a kind of like heavy mythology just on their own. And then a crafted mythology on top of that I like that you could say like can impart the qualities of its wielder on you. I mean, this is the cosplay mythology, right? Where like you see somebody dressed up like a character you have certain feelings about or thoughts about, you immediately just dump those feelings onto them.
And it like kind of plays back to reducing paradox from things, because if I say I have like the katana used by Oda Nobunaga to unite Japan, when I do supernatural things with it, I can also influence you to believe that like those were true things about the mythology of it. Sure. And so since I have that, it makes sense that it happens.
Well, I like the back and forth there too, because it's not only is the myth reinforcing your abilities, but your doing stuff reinforces the myth. Like, I feel like there's a sort of sanctity of meme there where you, like, you wouldn't use the Buster Sword to, like, open a can, right? Like, there's a certain kind of, like, it's the hallowed Buster Sword, even though it's from a video game, and, like, I like it. I like this sort of new mythology spin.
The meme will only share its power if you embody its idiom correctly.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, cool.
You can't be in a good mood when you're using Masamune. You have to like emo up and all that.
Yeah, as soon as you pick up the Buster Sword, you suddenly lose the ability to speak in more than 2 or 3 word sentences.
Your head turns it's like you got to make sure your hair is on point.
Awesome. All right, so as a
good work, Dave. Good work.
As a compare and contrast. I see your point because it's pointy. Yeah. As a compare and contrast experiment, let's take a look at Hillary's character. So
my character's not the same as these and doesn't have a Japanese name.
Well, and what's cool about it too is that you know, like, I think we're gonna see the subtle differences. Like, I already see there's quite a big difference between like Kaguya and Iori, but they exist in a closer to the sort of techno-magical paradigm space than I think your character will.
I think that too.
So let's talk about your character. What's your character's full name, Hillary?
My character's full name is Litany Ajax Easton Plum. Litany Ajax Easton Plum.
Okay, I like it. Is that her given name? Is that
Yep.
okay? So her parents named her that.
Yep.
Okay.
They did.
Your parents named you that?
I'm not judging. I'm not judging.
I love that question.
Did your mom pick it out for you? Oh.
So so let's talk a little bit about Litany. So Litany is a verbena, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where did Litany learn her verbena magic from?
Like night school.
Okay.
Like.
So who was?
It's one of the things that like I think that she was like working in kitchens and stuff, and I think it's kind of similar to the thing with Iori where it's like someone notices you, and kind of like I think that someone noticed her either from like kitchen work. I think it would have probably been from like just kitchen work, like scut work and like working her way up to like line cook, prep cook kind of thing. But that someone, either like someone at the restaurant working there or dining there, like a regular, noticed her and was like, "Hey, you should come to this like thing, this like meetup that we have," which was like, "Come to our night school mage training." Basically.
Yeah, so the verbena, you can usually kind of like lean on the like witchiest of tropes. Like there would have been a coven or something.
Yeah, it's like a weekly coven.
Yeah.
Come check our coven out. We feel like you'd be a really good fit for us.
Yeah, we have this like secret, one of those like secret dinner things maybe where like they take turns being like midnight dinners and the location's announced. Yeah, pop-up restaurants, exactly. Yeah, and we announced
illegal brunches. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, cool. So this other witch, your mentor. Were you close?
It's really small. Yeah, I mean, like relatively close. It's a pretty small coven. Like covens are usually in like significant numbers. Not
like threes or sevens.
As in large, but significant as in like important.
Significant with a capital S.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, this was a very small coven. I think like my mentor had moved to this city recently and was like starting up a new coven, and so it was just 3 of us. It was like her and somebody else who was like more experienced that I think she knew in the area already.
The whole like mother, maiden, crone trio thing.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I'm just making this up as I say it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's what we're doing here.
Story gaming.
Yeah. So, so that's cool. I like that. So you're kind of like taken in by them. They came. So they came here. Why did they leave wherever they were before?
I think. Well, they said that it was because it was like a branching out kind of thing, like that. Like part of the larger kind of Urbina organization or whatever, that there wasn't good representation in our city and blah, blah, blah. I think actually they had a big fight with some people and kind of like split off from other people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's just from stuff that I've like read into things that I've heard people say, but officially...
Yeah, there's like rumors and stuff.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Cool.
I think that there are other covens in the city, but I don't know them.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Which is also kind of weird. But they said, So I also, I have a feeling that like my actual mentor people were kind of a bit of a splinter sect. Not like, that they obviously obviously to me had some kind of falling out with some people, and so were a bit on the outs still, but hoping to work their way back in or mend some bridges or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm sure that the 3 of them didn't.
That everyone, like shifted over to them.
And I'm sure the 3 of them didn't necessarily agree, right? Like probably one of them was like, "We should go back and make amends," and the other was like, "No, fuck them forever." And and then the third was like, "Look, there's got to be
I'm the third one.
And so maybe they brought you in as, I mean, I don't know, would you? Well, I guess we can talk about that or learn that as we go. But so you'd consider the both of the other 2 to be your mentors sort of together?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they've got a bit of a storied history from some other place.
but I have decided that it's like not really about soul mentorship, because it's like, I mean, you can learn a lot from one person, but you can learn more from not one person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's certainly an approach. The Hermetic Order would disagree very much in that they would be like, no, you should only learn from one person because that person is your mentor and that's how this shit works. Like, don't listen to anybody else. We're trying to pass the paradigm along.
Whatever. The most important thing is to listen to yourself. Everyone knows that.
Yeah. But you have to be prepared to listen to yourself first. You got to go through the business. Okay, so let's talk about your paradigm a little bit, your focus. So, did you choose a paradigm from the?
So I picked the other parts of my focus, but I wasn't sure exactly what to pick for paradigm.
Sure.
So maybe we could actually talk about that a little bit, because I read all of them.
Yeah, so the paradigms. This is really just for you to understand, like, overarchingly what your character's belief structure looks like. If it's related to, like, to me, it sounds like we've talked a little bit about the sort of the instruments, and I can see again like how you worked backwards towards your character's paradigm here. Your practices
I
should
feel like
be easy
everyone
to
else is
figure
working
out.
in this direction, and I'm like,
Yeah, totally.
all of the big things, and then have to concentrate it down instead of the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So I feel like ones that feel like they potentially make sense for me are like everything is chaos, creation's divine and alive, world of God and monsters. I feel like those are kind of the three, or not divine order and earthly chaos, but I think those other three kind of.
Yeah. I think to a certain degree too, might is right. Would also work because it's a fairly sort of ruthless paradigm. It's pretty like, just if you have power, then that is a thing.
Yeah, definitely not chaotic good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, might is right is about like having power so that you have power, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually maybe that is good, because I actually don't feel like there is kind of a larger, like, overarching kind of.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is like when asked like, why did you do this or how did you do this, the other characters will have answers about, like, well, I was like, Andrew might be like, well, I was made for this. Like my higher purpose is that I have, unlike humans, I know what I was made for. And there's some struggling with that, but also like, I've just been made for this thing.
I don't really believe, like, I feel like we don't really believe in like higher purpose.
Yeah, and Iori, if you
That's
ask
kind
like,
of silly.
if you ask Iori like, why did you do this? It's so that I could understand it, right? Or because it was the thing that it had to be done. Because that's just the way that these things are.
really no.
Yeah, so for you, might is right is a very simple, straightforward, like, why did you do this? Because I can.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like that and everything is chaos are the ones that like actually felt reasonable to me. But yeah, so maybe might is right is actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good. Yeah, we lost Dave, and that threw Andrew's camera off. That's okay. It's just me and you right now, Hillary.
That's fine.
I'm still here.
Yeah, I hear you. But I had to turn your camera off because I could see like half of your face, and it was throwing things off. It's okay. This is our special time together, Hillary.
Is Andrew drifting out of frame again?
Talking about your character. No, this time it's not his fault. It's not him like leaning way over. It's once Dave dropped it, and then they're gonna flip, and I'm gonna have to.
Because it bumps over.
It's fine. Anyway.
I got it. Cool. Well,
Dave has become one with the internet. He started at Arate 10, and that's it. He's done.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah. Let's talk about your practices. So what practice did you choose?
Witchcraft.
You don't say.
Obviously.
So what does your witchcraft look like? Is it like
it says that you can
stirring and stuff, or is it like?
It says that you have to pick a minimum of 7 because 7 is a significant number, and I was like, a minimum of 7. So I picked a bunch and then counted how many I'd picked, and it was 12. So I picked one more. So it'd be a better number because the whole reason for 7 is because it's significant. So I picked 13 instead. It's all the things you'd expect. Blood and fluids, bones and remains, body work, brews and concoctions, drugs and poisons, eye contact, fashion, food and drink, herbs and plants, household tools, offerings and sacrifice, ordeals and exertion, sex and sensuality.
There you go.
It's covering my witchy bases.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Cool. So, so all those together make up your character's paradigm, and I think I've got a pretty good understanding of how that's going to look. So let's before we get started, let's take a couple of minutes and just talk about our setting, because we were so focused on the characters before that we kind of forgot, like, where is this happening? What that about? Where's the game going to go? So we talked a little bit about the idea of using kind of like a general, like a city, right? It's not like a specific place.
Yeah, like kind of a Gotham equivalent.
Yeah, because I think so. Here's the thing: we can either set it in a real place, in which case we run the risk of, and I don't think from a player perspective, I don't think we have this problem, but we run the risk of being like, oh, I don't really know that much about this place. I have to constantly like look up where things are, or be like, I live in this neighborhood, and then realize later, be like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, this character would never be able to afford living in that neighborhood. Why is that? But it's also easier because we can just be like, here's a map. You go here. This is what it looks like. And then on the flip side, if we decide to just make it like a city of our own deciding, we can just make it up. But it bends the verisimilitude a little bit, in that the game is supposed to, part of what makes the game like sort of magical is that it's set in the real world. But to be fair, like, if we downplay the city as a thing, we can always just be like, yeah, I mean, the Matrix is set in a city, right? They never specify where that is in the Matrix. Dark City is
still be a very real city.
Yeah, Dark City is the same way. So it's funny because I was like, well, where could we set it? And I was like, well, we could just set it in Vancouver, but then that would be three people live in Vancouver and Dave.
Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, so that'd be a little cruel.
We could do like just put it in like New York or something, which, like, a city that is so iconic that it is very easy for everyone.
If we did like a real city, I would say I would rather do LA than New York, I think.
LA is pretty on point.
Because I know
then I have to drive.
You would have, everyone would have to, that's what you get. Resources.
None of us took driving.
Well, I mean,
so we can't be in LA.
Hopefully you don't have to make driving tests in LA, but yeah.
God, that would be brutal.
No, literally, we can't be in LA if we don't drive.
Well, if you don't have any dots, you can still drive. You just don't have.
You just can't drive.
We'll all die on an interstate on ramp. This is. Yeah.
So I don't know. Do we have preferences? Because this is a thing that'll affect everybody, and it is kind of fun doing like research about a city. Like I like learning about a place because I'm like, oh shit, well the game is set there. Let's look things up and find out things about it. Yeah, I don't know. I think before I was leaning more towards the Gotham approach, but I'm starting to like lean maybe to more towards doing like LA or San Francisco. Because
Bristol, we're all in Bristol for no reason.
I love Chad is just suggesting random places. Winnipeg? No, come on.
No, we're not going to Winnipeg.
I mean, Scranton's
I want to be able to go outside,
choice.
Please.
Yeah, and now they're all debating whether or not you have to be able to drive if you live in LA. Florida is not a city, Utherix. Sorry.
It needs to be a major city.
Yeah.
That is cosmopolitan. I feel like it should either be. It just needs to be big. It needs to be real big.
Yeah.
Like San Francisco is unacceptable.
The problem with setting, and this is a sort of World of Darkness thing, anyone who's run a World of Darkness game before knows this, if you set it in a really small town or whatever, it's like, what other supernatural things are here? Nothing. It's just you.
Yeah.
You're taking up all the supernatural space. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling LA or San Francisco if we do that.
My vote's on San Francisco.
Your vote's for San Francisco?
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I know it's
because then we have the whole Bay Area to play with also.
That's true. Yeah.
And we can take Mooney.
Yeah.
These are Clipper cards.
See, you're doing it right. It's perfect.
I got a Clipper card in the other room right now.
What do you think, Dave? Do you think you could spend 20 minutes looking at the Wikipedia article for San Francisco?
Yeah. I was going to say all of these are completely foreign places to me, so it doesn't matter either way.
Yeah, we get to
But
broaden
I
Dave's
just feel like
horizons.
it's a big more place. Like being able to make references to things that exist. Having
Yeah.
a big old, like San Francisco is the place with the Golden Gate Bridge. We can have a fight there. There's loads of memes about that.
That's true. That I hadn't thought about that, but your character actually
You need a
benefits.
meme-rich environment.
Yeah, you benefit from being set in a
Yeah,
real
there's
place.
Alcatraz, the Golden
Yeah,
Gate,
man.
there's the streetcars, there's all kinds
Vancouver
of,
would have
like,
worked okay, but you would have just had to look up every movie that was filmed in Vancouver and then be like, "Did you know that this scene was actually filmed here?"
Well, the great thing about setting a game in Vancouver, if you have correspondence magic, would be like, I close the door in this place. I walk into one place, close the door, and I walk out in a totally different part of town because in this movie, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Like how in Tron, the guy's going across one bridge, they change the angle, and it's a different bridge.
This only makes sense and bothers the three of us in the cast, but it makes a lot
Or
of sense.
anyone who lives in New York or LA or anywhere that movies are filmed.
yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, we'll set it in San Francisco, and that gives y'all some broad variety of space to.
But this is like the World of Darkness, San Francisco.
Yes.
So it's got like a slight Gothic slant. to
Of
everything.
course, yeah. The Golden
There's
Gate.
more gargoyles than usual.
Well, so we can talk about that in the last couple minutes before we take our break, but that is definitely a thing. Like there's this thing, this overarching aesthetic built into all of the World of Dark. I mean, it's called World of Darkness for a reason. There's this thing called the Gothic punk aesthetic that the game is all kind of ascribed to, and the idea is that it's Gothic in the sense of like not only just what we think of as goth, but Gothic in the sort of romantic sense of the word, with like buildings are taller, shadows are darker. Yeah, there are gargoyles on buildings that probably wouldn't have gargoyles. The Golden Gate Bridge is probably way rustier, and like the fog is more menacing. You know,
Like the
More
Batman
menacing?
Animated
Damn.
Gotham is a very good example of like that end of the aesthetic.
yeah, yeah.
Like the
so-
sky is never blue; the sky is always some other color. Right?
Which
It's
is why
always,
San
like-
Francisco is perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Just
rains.
all
It rains more often, unless you're in a place where it never rains, in which case that's the oppressive weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, people generally are just like more kind of like downtrodden. And then the sort of punk aspect as well, and this is the same kind of like punk from Cyberpunk in that there's this idea of rebellion against a larger organization. There's like the man is a thing, and like the kinds of social structures that oppress people are like in a lot of ways like more obvious in this the setting.
And more embodied.
Yeah, more embodied,
Well.
exactly, yeah. So the kind of like trudging masses of gray-suited office workers, you know, filing off the BART to go to work. The themes of like gentrification and stuff would be very strong in this setting, where the like faceless real estate corporations are like putting people out on the street and kind of taking over their space. But by the same token, there is this like bright, colorful kind of underground rebelling against that. The idea that your characters particularly could be a part of the intent to change, the sort of, you know, there's this massive gap between the rich and the poor. The middle class is kind of a non-thing, and the idea here is to, you know, embody this sort of sense of like rebellion against that system. So just because the game is set in this kind of Gothic punk space, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's an accepted status quo. You're mages. That's your whole fucking deal. You change things. You get to make reality the way you want it to be. So, yeah. So that's